that this little accident you think happened is not necessarily an accident, but it's kind of like your body's way of saying, if you don't change your life somehow, something worse is going to happen. And like, I don't want to tell you what that something worse is, but think of the worst possible thing, and that's going to be you.
Welcome, everybody, to Unleash Your Greatness. I'm Adam Platt, and thanks for joining me today. I have a special guest on, Sabrina. Oh, man, I'm going to butcher this name. You're going to have to tell me.
Scholkowski.
Yes. So Scholkowski.
Good. That wasn't that bad.
I am horrible with names, especially those types of unique names like yours. But thank you for having me. So Sabrina is a former beauty, fashion, marketing, and PR expert. She is an entrepreneur, turned entrepreneur. She has overcome some amazing things in her life, such as bullying, self-esteem issues, and lack of confidence in her life. And so we're going to be talking about those. She has found podcasting, and she has her own show called the Pretty Sure Podcast. And so she's the host of that podcast. So Sabrina, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here today.
Hi, thanks for having me. How are you doing today? How's everything?
Good. So good. Thank you. I appreciate it. So you have this pretty incredible past of all these things that you've done, being in the beauty industry, the fashion industry, the PR industry. And yet people would look at you and say, she's, this beautiful woman. And yet you say, I had all these self-esteem and confidence issues, which is just mind-boggling, I would think, for most people who look at you and be like, why would she like suffer from self-esteem, being in that industry and being, thinking that you need to have this great self-confidence to go out there and be this fashion model and so forth. But I really want to kind of tune into your story of why you had those issues. And, it always kind of, kind of freaks me out when people say that they were bullied as a kid too, or when they were younger, because most of the time people think as bullies or people who are bullied as these kind of nerdy, dorky people. Anyways, so I want to hear your story of how you went from this person who was bullied, low self-confidence, self-esteem issues, even being in the industry you were, to where you are today as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Oh my God. I don't even know where to start. You said so many important things and I'm like, where do I even start? So first of all, I think I'll say I'm actually a big nerd at heart. Like when I was a kid, I used to go to spelling bees and like, I would be really good at math. Since I spoke English and we were in Mexico, I'd be like the smarty pants correcting the teachers. So I would always get sent to like the principal's office. So I was a nerd at heart. Like, let's just start with that.
That's okay. That's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Which is actually kind of ironic because I'll tell you a little bit about how I was bullied, but at the same time, at that point, I wasn't very scared of anything. I was just like very badass. Like the other day I was talking to my mom and she was like, honestly, sometimes I'm in awe. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, as a kid, you never cared about anything. Like you would be the one playing by yourself and having like a blast. You'd ask people like, hey, let's go do this. And if kids would tell you like, no, I don't want to do that, you'd be like, okay, peace out. And you'd go do it yourself. And she was like, I was always worried because I had my heart broken like for you, but you were just like, you didn't care. You did your own thing. And I'm like, really? I don't remember it like that. Like, what are you talking about?
It's so interesting how our parents have a different perspective of what our childhood and how we remember it, right? So I'm sure if I know I've talked to my parents about things in my childhood, and they're like, I don't remember that, and I'm like, are you sure? Because that was pretty traumatic, or it's just interesting. So that's funny that you brought that up.
Yeah, and when she told me that, I was like, really? Well, then what happened? But yeah, basically I was bullied as a kid because obviously I'm half Mexican, half German. And so for Mexico, I was really tall, but also I wasn't super blonde, but I wasn't super dark. So I was never one or the other, like sometimes I was too Mexican and sometimes I was too German. And so I got bullied a lot because of that, because of my last name, because when we moved back to Mexico, I didn't speak Spanish. I only spoke English, but it wasn't because I was pretentious. It was literally I, for some reason, just did not comprehend Spanish. So it was all of these things. And then obviously, as a kid, they kind of try to pick on people that are different. People were very insecure. It was like a little, now it's a city, but it used to be like a little town and it just grew. But here in Mexico, cities that grow from towns tend to be really close knit and very closed off to new people. And so I didn't know anyone there when we moved. We were obviously from a different city in Mexico, different country, my dad. And so it was just like a whole big mess. And so I think from there it started a little bit. I really became shy at some point, and then I gained weight. And then I was even bullied more when I moved schools because I was like chubby and I always had this like big, like not horrible nose. I love my nose, but kids always find stuff to bully you with. So when I was like 13, these guys, like these boys would used to tell me like, oh my God, you have a pig's nose or like you have something like that. And so I became super self-conscious. I was chubby and so they were making fun of me, and I basically just lost weight over a summer because I was like, I'm so tired of this. Like, I want to change. I want people to see me like, damn, that's her. Wow. But spoiler alert here, if you lose weight, it doesn't help you anyway because you might look it, but you don't have the part on the inside. You know what I mean? Like, you have to do a lot more inner work, which I didn't do at the time.
That's a good point. And first of all, I think everybody has things about themselves they don't like. You brought up, maybe the way you looked or things like that. When I was young, I had this, believe it or not, full head of hair, like really thick hair, and it was really hard to. It was kind of naturally curly, and so it was really hard to like comb down. And I hated it, and kids would kind of make fun of me because it was just hard to take care of. Now you would never guess that I had that much hair because I've lost a lot of it. But and so I really hated my hair, and now I wish, going back, and be like, man, I wish I had that hair again. But yeah, I think we
Yeah.
all have that self-conscious thought that there's things about me I don't like. And I love the fact that you brought up that you have to do the work on the inside, because even though you change yourself, maybe your appearance, if you haven't done the work on the inside, then you're still going to be self-conscious, right? And you're always going to be lacking in self-confidence or self-esteem. So I love that you brought that up, that even though you lost weight and everybody probably stopped making fun of you about that, you still had this inner, like, maybe some people would call like imposter syndrome or something, like that's not really me, like,
Oh,
maybe you
yeah.
have a different take on what that was, but yeah, you have to do the work on the inside for sure.
Yeah, oh my God. Like I still remember it was really funny because all of those boys that made fun of me were kind of like dying to go out with me after I lost weight. So it was kind of like my moment, of like not vindictive, but that moment where you're like, okay, now you're into me, so like now I've made it. But still on the inside, I was not doing the inner work. I still felt like that little chubby girl that was shy, and like the only thing that people would be attracted to was because I was skinny or whatever. So definitely whoever's listening, if you don't do the inner work, doesn't matter how good you look on the outside. People, yeah, will react to it, but you won't, like you said, you'll feel like you have an imposter syndrome, right? And then that will bring up other problems, will stem other things, and then it's just like a vicious circle.
Yeah, for sure. And and boys can be so stupid, right? I remember my younger brother. He had this girl that liked him, and all his friends kind of made fun of him because she was a little on the heavier. I mean, she wasn't like fat or anything, but she was, a little bit on the bigger side. And then like 3 or 4 years later, all of a sudden she lost all this weight, and she was this beautiful woman. And we're all like, dude, Kevin, you kind of missed your chance at that one, because he kind of pushed her away because he felt stupid for his
Yeah.
friends making fun of him for this girl liking him. And boys are stupid, so especially young boys, they're just silly. But, um,
Yeah, yeah. But
But
you
yeah,
know, it was a kind of moment where I was like, okay, okay, so now the tables have flipped. Okay.
it's probably a little bit of that, yeah, kind of back in your face type situation, right? Like, oh yes, you know, I can't think of the
Yeah.
word right now, redemption or whatever, right? Where you
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
felt good, like, oh, they're all Googling over me now, but they were jerks to me a while ago. So, but yeah, it's so important. I think the message here is it doesn't matter how much uh, change your outside appearance, you got to do the inside work. Although that can help, right? Like I'm sure doing those things and did help you feel better to a point, and especially like when you got attention from other people and they'd say, "Oh, you look great," or things like that. But uh, validation from other people only goes so far if you don't feel it in your heart. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And then it creates like bad habits, right? Because after that, then I kind of like promised myself, oh, you know what? You're never going to gain weight anymore because then people are not going to like you. And so it created this whole cycle of I was gaining a bit of weight and then I was like, okay, I have to like stop eating this or that or like go to the gym or, I put a lot of importance on like the external validation. And so if someone wouldn't like me, I was like, oh, it's probably because I gained weight or stuff like that. So in not looking inside, you kind of like just perpetuate in a different way, right?
yeah, for sure. So, how did you go from you know not having that self worth, that self love for yourself, to now you're this amazing entrepreneur who helps other people and other women find their self worth in themselves?
Oh my God, it's been a whole journey. Like that wasn't, I think at that point I was like, okay, now I'm okay. Now I've got things to do. Like now I know how to make friends. I've kind of worked on myself. Not really, but like I thought I had. And then from there, I still went on to something that was even worse. So I dated this guy that was kind of like a psychopath. He gave me so much more self-confidence issues after we broke up. He, was kind of, he had like mommy issues, he had daddy issues. And then on top of that, he was still hung up with his ex. And so he would constantly say stuff like, oh, like I like you, but like I'll never love you as much as I loved my ex. And like, oh, comments like that, which when you look back, you're like, how the hell did I even let this person do that? Like how the hell did I accept those comments? But at the time, you don't think of it. You're like, oh my God, the guy's hot, or like the guy's nice, or the girl, in case you're a guy or whatever it is. You're like, oh, this person's like so nice. Like I should want to be with them. Like it doesn't matter that they say these things. And so little by little, that kind of like self-confidence, it had taken me years to rebuild, just like went back down. And so from there, ended up in Paris, ended up in fashion world. And so I was thrust in this life of like go party every night and like go drink and like go meet hot models and go on Tinder and like go meet other people and go party and go meet friends and then just go to like festivals and all of that. Because I was kind of like trying to get over this ex and trying to feel good about myself, which I then gained weight. And then it just like, it was a whole bad spiral, right? For a while. But when you're in that cycle, you don't really notice these things. You're just like, oh, this is going to make me feel better. And then you do it, and then it just like makes you feel worse, but you can't stop because that, I don't know, 5 minutes, an hour, whatever it is that makes you feel good. You're like, oh, I have to, like, you're constantly chasing this high?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's interesting because I think when you're in that cycle, like you said, as a coach, I have been trained to talk about that as like the crazy eight cycle, where you just keep kind of going in this crazy weird cycle because uh, and what happens is people have um, they have needs that there's like the six human needs, but they're not the six human needs most people talk about. And the first two are variety or consistency, and then variety. And what happens is as uh, you're in these cycles, right? And it's consistent, but then you get tired of it because it's this toxic cycle. And so then you'll break that with variety. And so you get mad or upset. And that's usually when you lash out at people, especially loved ones, or you'll do something to maybe harm yourself, or you'll go into deep depression or anxiety. And because you're breaking that cycle, and then all of a sudden you're like, I don't like this anymore. And so then you'll go and you'll do what you were doing before because it makes you feel good again. And it's just this vicious cycle. So we have to break that cycle. And I know that you have a
Mhm.
story of where you learned how to kind of snap yourself out of that, which is awesome. And so I wanted
Yeah.
part of this story for sure. But I think it's important for people to understand kind of what that cycle looks like, and there is ways to get out of that cycle to change your mindset and your perspective and your state to get out of that cycle. So
Yeah, definitely. And it's really interesting that you say that because obviously now looking back at it, the whole me going on a lot of dates, me going partying, me drinking, me having all of these friends, it was me trying to not get as hurt as I got hurt with X, right? So I would constantly choose men that were unavailable. I would constantly choose men that I thought were good, but in the end, they ended up cheating or they ended up dating like multiple people at the same time because I was like, oh no, this man hurt me at the beginning. Like, I don't want to go back to that. So I'll just find people that I know I can't like seriously rely on or whatever it is so that it doesn't hurt as bad, right?
right.
Which is, you can't see it when you're in the moment. You're just like, oh my God, why did this happen? Why did I break up? Why did this person cheat? And then looking back at it, I can even see it with some friends of mine, when I met them through those cycles or whatever it is. I'm like, damn, that's why. Like, because we didn't want to get hurt or because something happened and we were looking for the complete opposite. And so, what you mentioned in the beginning with the whole fashion world, it's interesting. I kind of left the fashion world because of that. Because I think it still has like a long way to go in terms of being ethical, in terms of body shaming, and all of those things. There was this whole culture of you have to be skinny because most of the sample sizes, if you work in a fashion show behind the scenes or whatever it is, you have to look good constantly. So that was one. You'd have to like wear makeup, have nice hair, have nice clothes. And then if you did end up getting paid and gotten free clothes, it wouldn't fit you because you weren't sample size. And so it was like this whole perpetuating cycle. People used to be just very interested in what you can offer them rather than just like kind of trying to get to know you. And they would just be like, maybe one week they like you because they heard you're friends with whoever. And then next week, oh, that person doesn't like, they're not the hot item of the month. So they don't pay attention to you anymore. And so I kind of decided at one point, I was like, listen, you can either continue down this path or become very like vulture negative type of fashion stereotype there is, or you can just get out of it and like the fashion world, like from the outside. You already had the perspective, you know how it works, but like now you have a step back so you can actually have fun with it. That's kind of like what drove me away.
Awesome. And I think that that's honorable that you actually decided to give all that up, because some people would view that lifestyle as very exotic or exciting. And the fact that you kind of saw through all that and saw the kind of superficial side instead, and you're like, you know what, this isn't for me. I need to get out of this and get away from it. And you could tell that it was toxic for you and your life. So kudos to you for seeing that. And that's awesome. That's so cool.
Thank you. People thought I was crazy because obviously I studied fashion. I had been in the fashion world for like 6 years. And then all of a sudden I turn around and I'm like, no, I'm going to do communication. And everyone was like, weren't you studying like, weren't you hanging out with models and like partying and doing stuff? And I'm like, yeah, but that got boring.
So, so that's a good point, and I want to touch on that for just a minute. What did people say mostly to you when you decided to make this change, this shift in your life? Because it is quite a difference, right? And I think lots of times people are afraid to make changes in their life because they are scared of what other people are going to think, or they're going to lose friendships or relationships with others. And so, what was kind of like, uh, how did you deal with that? Right. Because there obviously was some kind of blowback from people, friends, and I'm sure you did lose friends and people that you thought were close to you because of that. But you did it anyway. So how did you deal with that?
Yeah, so that's actually an interesting point you make. Obviously, most of the friends that I had made throughout the fashion time that I was there, they were kind of friends for the moment or friends from time to time whenever fashion week was on. They would come fly to the city and then we'd hang out, we'd go out drinking or whatever it is, have dinner or whatever. So back when I was like, oh, you know what, I'm actually not working in fashion anymore, everyone was like, wait, what are you doing now? Like, that's so weird. Why would you quit? And it actually took me a while to fully 100% get out of the fashion world because it just kept following me. So like whenever I would apply to a job, I would only get like fashion interviews because they'd be like, "Oh, you have all this experience in fashion, like we want you." Or, if I would look for like a short internship, people would mostly consider me for fashion things because they saw in my CV or everything that I did. And I was like, I want to do something more. I want to do something interesting. And everyone would be, yeah, but you have all this experience in fashion and that's what we need. And so I kind of had to put my foot down at some point and was like, no, this stops right now. Like, I'll take the skills, but I want to do something entirely different. And I ended up in beauty, which was to a lesser degree what fashion was. Like, the beauty industry is a very interesting one, but it depends on what brands you work for. And unfortunately, I was working for some brands that really didn't care that much about the environment, or weren't very ethical, or they weren't actually living up to their values. And so I also had to kind of like take a step back with what you said, that I had a really interesting story. So basically, do I continue or do you want to ask me
Yeah, no,
something?
no, go ahead.
So basically, I was in the midst of working for the beauty industry. I was working for this big fashion. Well, it was kind of like a fashion, perfume, beauty conglomerate that had a bunch of brands underneath them. And I was working for a new beauty brand they had just created. It was supposed to be the first feminist brand. It was like, it had a nice mission, but it stopped there. Like, they didn't really take it a step forward. They were more concerned in the company with revenue and actually making profits rather than making something good. And so randomly, this one day in October of 2018, I think it's been 2 years now. Yeah, October 2018. I had taken up this like hobby of riding my bike everywhere in Paris because it was nice weather and you just experience the city differently. If
Mm.
anyone's ever been, it's not the same if you walk than if you bike. There's like a complete different, there's just this whole experience of driving a bike and then just randomly looking out and it's like, oh, the Eiffel Tower is there. Like, so pretty.
Awesome.
Um, yeah. And so this one day I'm riding my bike after brunch and I still remember, I was thinking I need to buy a helmet because this is pretty unsafe. And I tried to go up on like the bike lane and my wheel ended up getting stuck and I fell. And I basically sprained my ankle to the point where it was almost broken. So I lived at the time in a 6 flight of stair elevator in Paris. You can imagine it's not easy to go up and down with crutches. So I called my parents and they were like, listen, you need to come home because you don't have a boyfriend. Like, we don't have family over there. No one can take care of you. Even if any of us flies over there, we still have to go 6 flights of stairs. So like, come here, ask for sick leave, and then we'll take care of you. You'll recuperate and then go back. So that's what I did. And at that time, an aunt of mine had told me about this like spiritual mind healer type of person that was helping her and my cousin through some stuff. She was like, oh, she's really good with people that have accidents because she helps align your entire body internally and externally. You should go see her and see what happens. And I was like, whatever makes me walk faster, because I cannot be sitting here in my room for another day. I will go insane. Like, this is not, I'm a very go-getter person, right? So I was just like, this is not for me. So long story short, I end up going to this woman and she kind of like analyzes me energetically. And she's like, how are you not more sick? And I was like, excuse me, what are you talking about? And she was like, yeah, you have all these things. And she started listing the symptoms, right? She was like, tell me if this relates to you. You can't find a boyfriend or you can't find love. You keep getting hurt. You don't put boundaries. You keep getting toxic friends. You do this, you do that, you do it. And I was just like, are you a witch? Like, what are you talking about? Did somebody tell you something? Because this is not adding up. And she was like, listen, I can sense it from like your energetic level. I can sense it from everything. And I just want to tell you that this little accident you think happened is not necessarily an accident, but it's kind of like your body's way of saying, if you don't change your life somehow, something worse is going to happen. And like, I don't want to tell you what that something worse is, but think of the worst possible thing. And that's going to be you. And I was like, it was a very shocking moment at that point where I was like, well, damn, I think I have to change my life somehow. And so little by little, I kind of like quit my job, started figuring my life out, started listening more to what I wanted rather than what other people wanted, started caring less about what other people would say, cared less, if I had zits or if I was a little bit chubby at the time or if whatever was wrong. I was like, listen, the only person that needs to be happy is you. I don't want to keep getting sick. I want to be okay. And I kind of did like a whole 180. Like, I started doing that, became vegan, started taking care more of like my mindset, mental health, and all of those things, and kind of like unraveling the patterns, right, to change my life. And so that's kind of like what's brought me to where I'm at right now.
That's awesome. And so the thing is that this was only 2 years ago. That's not that long ago
It feels
for
like a decade.
but the changes you've made in such a short time is super amazing. And it just goes to show that when you are ready to make a change in anybody, make a change in their life, you can do it as soon as you want, right? As soon as you stop caring what other people think and what people might say, and you're like, you know what, I've got to make this change in my life. And luckily for you, it took a sprained ankle and going home to your family to get that perspective from, meeting this coach, mentor, spiritual leader that you talked about. And that's amazing. And then from there, you've just taken off and making changes in your life. And that's super just impressive that you, and I think that you've always been an implementer. Like from your story, you've always been an implementer. You've always decided you're going to do something and you do it.
Yeah.
And so I can see that is a part of your life, which is great. But what would you say for people who maybe don't have that drive like you have, but they know there's something that needs to change, but they don't know how to do it? They're not sure exactly, what steps to take, first steps at least to take to make those changes and their shifts in their life. What would you say to someone like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, definitely it always starts with listening to yourself, right? And this is something that I kept pushing back for so long. I thought I was listening to myself, but in case I was just listening to other people. So, the most important thing, whether you want to make a change or you feel like you want to do something different, is just sitting yourself down and thinking, okay, is what I'm doing, is this person, this relationship, this friendship, this city, this apartment, whatever it is this making me happy? If it's not making me happy, why is it not making me happy? Is it because I don't like the people? Is it because I don't like the job? Is it because I think I have other passions? Is it because I'm bored of the city? Like, whatever it is, there's always a reason. And then once you figure that out, the world is kind of like open with endless possibilities because then you can start taking the next step and then the next and then the next. So it's always about figuring out what it is that you want. Doesn't matter if that takes you a while. Just figure out what you don't like in your life currently and then start brainstorming things you can actually do to change it. If you don't like your job, if it's maybe because you don't like your boss, ask for a transfer to another department or try finding the same job in another company. Or if it's the industry, change industries. Like make these little steps or start talking to people and asking for help because that's also something I wasn't very good at, still not great at. It takes me a lot to ask for people to help me. But those are kind of like the first steps to actually changing your life. Doesn't matter if you don't have the drive, like it's just listening to yourself and figuring out what you don't like.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that when you get clear on what you don't want, then it's easier to decide on what you do want, and that's where your focus needs to go. Stop focusing on what you don't want, right? At that
Exactly.
point, after you've decided what you don't want, stop focusing on that and focus on what you do want, and then start making the changes to reach that goal, lifestyle, whatever. And because what we focus on grows, right? We hear that all the time. And so if you're focusing on the negative and what you don't want, then it's kind of like you when you were talking about the toxic people you were hanging out with, the boys, the you were dating, the men you were dating, and things like that. It's because that's kind of what you were focusing on, and so that's
Mhm.
what you were attracting. And it's the same thing. It's same in anything. Like if you're all of a sudden like, I want I don't know, a white
Car.
car, right? All of a sudden you're going to see white cars everywhere, right? Because that's what you're focused on. Well, maybe
Yeah.
you really want red, but for some reason you're focusing on white, right? And it's the same in life. It's what you focus on is what is going to come and you're going to see more of in your life. So, um, yeah, get clear on what you don't want and then focus full heartedly on what you do want in your life. And that's what you're going to be able to see and visualize in your life. And you're going to attract that and bring it more into it. So, I'm so glad that you brought that up. That's awesome. So,
Yeah,
uh,
100%. And I think once you've already figured that out, then if you think you don't have a drive, you'll find that you magically suddenly do because it's not that it's hard anymore. It's, I really want this, I want to attract this, and I want to find a way to do it right. So, for example, as podcasters, you and I both know sometimes people will say, oh, but I'm too shy to start a podcast. And then I always challenge people and I'm like, are you too shy or are you not sure what you would talk about? Because if you're a business owner, but you hate talking about business and it would light you up to talk about tennis, but you feel like you have to start a podcast about business, well, obviously you're going to be shy. Obviously, you're going to hate talking about that. And obviously, you're not even going to put the intention of finding guests. But if someone turns around and says, hey, let's start a tennis show, randomly, you'll probably have like a list of 10 people to talk about. Everything will start aligning. And then you find that you're not actually shy.
Yeah, and that's awesome. That's a great point. And so for me personally, uh, one thing that I've always struggled with is I just hate how I look on camera. Like I look at myself, I'm like, oh, I'm so dorky looking, and my voice is awful, and all these things, right? All these things we tell ourselves, and so I decided I'm like maybe podcasting is the way to go because then it's just my voice. People don't really see me and then I'm like, you know what, though? I need to stretch myself and I need to put myself out there. So I'm going to do the podcast because I think that that's a great way to learn how to be, doing interviews, communicating, meeting people, connecting. But I also want to do video for my YouTube. And so I record both video and audio for my podcast and for my YouTube channel. And I'm like, I just got to do it. Like it's, and it's been such a great way for me to just put myself out there and stretch myself, get out of my comfort zone
Yeah.
because I still don't love me on video, especially like right now. I've got the camera on me and I've got these dorky, breakouts on my face right now because of mask and all that stuff that's going on right now. And I'm like, I hate it. But at the end of the day, like probably nobody even noticed that. And so they do now that I mentioned it, but and maybe some people did and whatever, like that's fine.
Yeah.
But for the most part, people are just like, okay, what's he talking about? What's the content? Is it good? And do I enjoy it? And so yeah, you're exactly right. Like if you love something, then go after it and do it, but also make sure to stretch yourself a little bit and put yourself out there. So that's where real growth happens. And you did that when you totally changed careers, right? Like you went from fashion and beauty industry to communications. Like that's like a total 180. uh,
Yeah. And then after that, I was like, screw all of that. I'm going to start a podcasting business.
yeah, and that's awesome. And now you're helping people, specifically women, I believe.
I changed it. Now it's both men and women because I
Okay.
realized there's a bigger camp to do.
Yeah. And so men and women help them understand how to tell their story and
Yeah.
through your podcast. And so that's fantastic. And the fact that you're doing that, you're putting yourself out there and you're making, uh, again, another career shift in your life is just wonderful. And it just shows that anybody can do it, right? Like if you don't like where you're at right now in life, then make a change. It's your
Yeah.
life. Like you can choose. And that's the beautiful thing about this life that we have. Very few people are in a situation where they can't choose what they want. There are people, I realize there's governments that maybe suppress you and things like that, but for the most part, we can choose. And at the very least, we can choose how uh, we choose to act to any situation, whether it's good or bad. So
Yeah, 100%. And I totally agree with what you're saying because that was same for me. Like you see me right now, I could probably seem like the most confident person on camera. Let me tell you, it has been a year. Like the first time I was looking the other day through my Instagram, the first time I actually addressed my followers, like grabbed my phone and was like, "Hey guys," rather than just putting a picture, was almost a month to the day, like a year to the day ago, sorry. And I've had Instagram since like 2014. So for 8 years, 7 years, the only thing that I talked about was like, here's a picture, here's what I do. And then randomly one day I just decided, like you, I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to see what happens. And then ever since then, I've gone on to now do podcasts. I do lives weekly. I hadn't done a live, I think, since ever. The first live I did was in April. It was horrible, like the worst. Like you can even check it on my profile and you'll say, who the hell is this person? Like I was so awkward. I was shaking. I kept like stumbling on my words. I talked really fast. Didn't even think that I had it in me to like string words along. So like you said, if I could do it, anyone could do it. Trust me. I was super awkward.
But you did it, and that's the most important thing is you put yourself out there, and that's so much. That's like 90% of the success is just doing it, taking a step, taking actions,
Yeah.
and putting yourself in a situation where maybe you're uncomfortable, but you're going to grow from it and learn. So that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. So cool.
Yeah, keeping it real here.
Absolutely. So, so tell me a little bit about more what you do. So you're a coach and you help people and specifically millennial entrepreneurs. So how does that work? So you coach them how? What kind of coaching do you do?
Yeah, so I've actually been struggling with the niche particularly because obviously I love to deal with millennials and entrepreneurs, but what I've realized is I was scared of using the word content creator because we have attached this like very negative meaning to it. Like you think content creator and you think, oh, blogger, influencer. But if you actually think about an entrepreneur, we're all content creators. Like we're on podcasts, we're on video, like we're creating content. We are going on, we give speeches, we go on summits. We are all content creators. And so now I like to say content creators, parentheses, millennial entrepreneurs. And how I help them is, throughout my whole story, throughout all of that I've done, I realized that it is really important to learn how to turn your mess into your message. So basically your story, how to tell it to make an impact. Podcasting is incredible nowadays for growing your business. I like to say it's the new PR. It's mostly free for the most part. If you want to do it well, you do have to invest a lot in it, time, effort, resources, and everything. But it's mostly free. You can learn it. You can, grow your business through word of mouth. You get people to know who you are, and so rather than buying from a stranger, if they hear from you every week, week in and week out, you don't have to divulge your personal life. By the way, that's like personal choice, but you can, just talk about business. You can give business tips. You'll still infuse it with your personality. And so people will get to know the real you and the real you behind business. And they'll be more likely to buy from you rather than you, spending money on ads or like Facebook ads or whatever that is. And so I find it is a very, very great and organic way to convert leads into clients, people to get to know you, and also to create your community. A lot of people might not be in it to actually make money from it, but they're in it to get the influence, to meet like-minded people, to create this community where, for example, in your case, if we're talking about all of these struggles, it's to create a community of people that have been through like hardships. They want to connect about those things. They want to grow, and all of those things. So yeah, we cover all of that. And for the moment, I have one-on-one programs, launching a podcast agency as well. So that's the big 2021 thing to do. It's going to be focused on PR for podcasters, branding for podcasters, and I'll include a bit of production because that's always what brings in the money, right?
Absolutely. Very exciting. That's so fun. And
Yeah.
so I, I absolutely love that you're doing that and that you're just pushing full steam ahead on that. And I think what you're doing is in helping people understand how to tell their story is so important because that's how we connect with each other is through our message. Like you said, our mess is our message. And we all have a mess somewhere in our past, somewhere in our life. There's those messes, and that does become our message. And when we share that openly and um, authentically, people connect with that. And like you said, then you can get clients, you can get people, you can just and for some people it's just to connect with other people, and that's a very worthy reason for doing it as well. So that's awesome. That's amazing that you're doing that. So I want to find out where people can get a hold of you if they want to work with you, if they want to look more into what you do, what you coach, more of your story. Where can I get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I'm super excited to say that my website is actually releasing between tomorrow and Wednesday. I'm fixing some back end issues. I have poured my heart and soul into it, so you'll get to know a lot of me. Has my agency, has my podcast, and has all information about the coaching. So it is www.sabrinasc.com. So that's the website. And if you want like more personal contact with me, I have my Instagram account. I'm always on there. I joke that I live on Instagram nowadays because I'm always posting stuff. I'm always answering people's messages, reposting, chatting. So if you want to chat with me directly, you have questions, you want some help, or you just want to, I don't know, maybe get something off your chest, my handle is at that girl Sabrina. Literally, like, who's that? That girl Sabrina. So that's my handle. Very easy to find. And yeah, those are the two ways people can contact me. You'll have all the information on my podcast there as well, everything I do, and all of my tips, tricks, and fun things that I go through.
Awesome. Fantastic. And for those who are listening, I'm going to put those links in the description of this podcast or on YouTube, if depending on where you're listening or watching this. And please reach out to Sabrina. Go check out her website, her podcast, or her Instagram, where you can see more about her and what she does and how she's helping people go out and share their message authentically and helping people live their life more fully. So awesome. So I always like to kind of wrap up my interviews and my discussions like this towards the end with this question, and that is, Sabrina, if there is 1 to 3 things that you think someone needs to do to unleash the greatness within themselves, what would that be?
Oh my God, that's a hard question. See, I'm usually on the not the receiving end, but on the other end asking the difficult questions. So now I'm like, I feel like I'm on the spot. But okay, 1 to 3 things that can help people unleash the power within them. So I would definitely say number 1, stop caring about what other people think about you, because that's not going to bring you absolutely anywhere. And in the end, it's not like you can say, oh, what I did was worthwhile because X person loved it. So think about yourself. Obviously, don't be selfish, but I mean it in a way of like, think about what it is that you truly want and what would make you happy, and go for it. Doesn't matter what other people think. Second thing, which is something that I love to preach about, is the first of everything will always suck. So like your first episode, your first video, your first whatever it is, Instagram post, relationship, it's not going to be good. It is going to suck. And the faster you get, behind the idea that whatever you do, it's going to be bad, I think the better it is for you, because you take the pressure off, and then you can remember, if this one sucked, the next one's going to be better. And then if that one sucked, the next one's going to be better. And it always gets better. It can never get worse. So that would be number 2. And I guess number 3 would just be follow your passion, like whatever it is. If you want to clean windows, if you want to cook, if you want to launch a podcast, if you want to crochet, be a basketball player, whatever it is, follow your passion, and the rest will kind of like follow. You'll find a way, you'll be happier, and you'll be able to connect with more people.
Awesome. Such great advice. Not caring what other people think. Realize that things are going to suck at first when you try them. I always like to say fail faster, because the more you do it, the better you get. So just be, determined that at the first you're going to be awful at it. And then the last is follow your passion. I love that as well. So beautiful words and great inspiration. Sabrina, it has been a pleasure having you on the show and for you to share your message as well as your great insights. I've enjoyed the conversation so much. Thank you. I appreciate it being for you to come and spend this time on the show. So, and
Thank you for having me. It's been great. And I also love the conversation. Great questions, great discussion. I love these types of like deep talks, don't talk surface level. We actually go into the thing. So I love that.
awesome. Well, thank you. And for those who are listening, please reach out to Sabrina. Go check her Instagram, her website. Again, you can find those links below this episode. And everybody, go out there and live your life to the fullest, and go and tap and unlock the greatness that is inside of each and every one of you. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you later.